Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the manifesto that we've been waiting for. You know, me known as the Bane guy, I know a little thing or two about curses, and this probably affects the build that I'm known the most for the most. This is pretty exciting. I've seen some pretty two-head takes out there saying things like rip Occultist and stuff like that. We're going to go over that and go into some detail on why it's not rip Occultist. So yeah, let's get right into it. I got some math, we got some numbers, and yeah, we'll see exactly why this is generally just a good thing across the board. If you want the TLDR, hidden monster penalties against curses have been removed. This is the biggest one that I think some people are ignoring. Hexes are now stronger against unique monsters and at least twice as strong against pinnacle bosses because of the hidden monster penalties being removed. Doom mechanic has been removed, thank God. Basically right now, when you manually cast a curse on a monster, and if you have some of the notables on the passive tree, that makes it even stronger. It will gain Doom, and it basically only interacts with Hexblast right now, where Hexblast has a more damage multiplier based on how much Doom is on the monster. It's a really clunky, weird mechanic that, yeah, never panned out. They never supported it. They never gave you anything really in addition that would make it any better or more interesting. So it was an experiment and they're removing it. Occultist ascendancy had some stats removed and moved around. This is a thing that I think they just don't know what to do with Occultist because she's so strong. But in the end, particularly for my Bane build, it doesn't really matter at all. Enfeeble and Tempt Chains being buffed is really good. Right now, it does almost nothing on bosses, and now it will actually do something on bosses, which will be pretty cool. It'll be interesting to see how slow we can make them. Less accessible sources of curse effect have been removed. This is basically just going to be on unique gear. This is primarily to combat curse bots, because right now curse bots are in party play. They're very, very strong. If we got all these buffs and they didn't nerf specifically to curse bots, it doesn't really affect anyone else. Hex gems have been rebalanced with the goal of ensuring that self-cast remains relevant compared to automatic curse application. This is totally fine. However, we don't know the exact number, so trying to be doom and gloom or having any exact comment on this would be foolish. We buffed a bunch of hex-related unique items. We'll see a couple of them. They're pretty interesting. And we've also added some powerful unique items that interact, which is pretty cool. So this is the most important thing. Right now, against unique monsters, is a 33% less effect, not reduced, less. And then pinnacle bosses will have a 66% less modifier. So the way that it works is increased, as we all know, right? Increased and reduced is a single additive multiplier, and then every single more or less multiplier is independent. So no matter how much you stacked it before, the less modifier would just like cut that down, you know, really, really low. Curses specifically would do almost nothing. Specifically also the wording of Enfeeble and Tempt Chains, it made them even less effective against pinnacle bosses and stuff like that. If you want to see a current, you know, math of how this works, is right now an elemental weakness, curse on hit ring. It's a level 1 elemental weakness, and then it has 20 or 32% increased effect depending on the tier. So base elemental weakness is 20%, and then if we multiply that by 1.32, 32% increased effect is 26.4. So against, you know, white and blue monsters, fine, your elemental weakness curse on hit ring is stronger. What they're going to be doing is removing that effect, but they're also removing the less modifier as well from unique and pinnacle bosses. So right now, if you're fighting Maven, that gets multiplied by 0.33 because it's 66% less, so you're only getting 33% of that effect. So that actually is only 8.7 minus elemental res, and which probably gets round down because everything is rounded against the player in Path of Exile. So you only will get 8 minus 8 elemental res against Maven right now with your curse on hit ring. And since they're removing that 66% less, it's just going to be minus 20 no matter what with your curse on hit ring. This is a gigantic buff. Even for a curse on hit ring, this is not pushing you to self-cast. They're just removing that curse effect, so it's not way too strong after the buff. So hopefully that clears that up. Yeah, right now, your curses are doing very, very little against bosses. It's a, you know, it's a nice damage added boost, which feels good, but they're not really the biggest part of your damage at the moment. Doom mechanic, yeah, as I said before, Doom is just a thing where you have stacking Doom, and then you can cast Hexblast and remove it, and no one really played around it. It was pretty bad. Even when you do Hexblast right now, you just don't play around Doom at all. It's good that they're removing it. They said they're going to add a new keystone, so it'll be interesting to see what they put there. Right now, we have Doomsday, and they're going to be changing this, so curious to see what that's going to be. Curse-related uniques, we got Anathema here, which is pretty interesting. So it's a ring that does very little, except your curse limit is equal to your maximum power charges. So by default, you put that thing on, you got max 3 curses. And then especially if you're a witch, really, really easily, you can just take this node right here and you can have 4 curses. Heretic's Veil right here is pretty cool. Socketed gems supported by level 22 Blasphemy. They're upping the reservation efficiency from 20 to 30 and +2 level socketed curse gems. So just a little bit of a numerical buff across the board for Heretic's Veil. This is going to be pretty interesting for certain builds that, hey, you can just toss in Temp Chains and Enfeeble, maybe even in like a hardcore build. And since the effectiveness of that is so high now, this could be pretty compelling in a couple of ways. So we'll see if more people use Heretic's Veil here in the future. Yeah, a lot of people are reading into this one a lot, ensuring that self-cast is powerful. Basically, any automated form of applying a curse, something like a curse on hit ring, they're just going to be removing that increased effect. However, with the curses being stronger by a lot on bosses specifically, where it actually matters, certain things like Coward's Chains, where maybe you actually do want that increased curse effect, that'll hurt a little bit. But by and large, if you're putting the Hex on a boss, it will just be significantly stronger no matter what. Hex skill gem scaling. Right now, some hexes like Vulnerability and Despair are much more powerful than others. This is because Hex on hit modifiers apply a Hex equivalent to the level 1 version on the Hex skill gem. Some hexes are very strong at level 1 relative to the level 20 power because they scale in a more gradual way. They're just going to be rebalancing this. And the reason why they're doing this is for automated cursing. Anything that is actually socketing the curse gem and leveling it up, you probably won't even notice that much since they're going to be scaled up. They just want to make it so that the level 1 version isn't going to be super, super strong. And so if we look at a curse like Elemental Weakness, it's already about twice as strong at level 20, -39 versus level 1 at -20. So I feel like Elemental Weakness is one of those curses that just generally won't get touched. So that's why I used it in my example here for a curse on hit ring, and why I think it'll probably be about the same. We just know that these are going to be significantly stronger against bosses. I think even a curse on hit ring will be significantly stronger against bosses because losing that 66% less modifier. Scaling curse effect, they are removing a lot of access to curse effect, primarily just on gear. And like I said, I think this is totally fine because right now that 33 or 66% less modifier is so strong against unique and pinnacle bosses. The change is going to be still in the positive way. Now, I don't think we're just going to be 2 or 3 times stronger with our curses against bosses for free, but I think even a regular curse on hit ring or automated curses will still be noticeably stronger. But they're just doing this to offset how much they're going to be buffing it by removing that modifier. They're removing the 15% increased effect of curses, and enemies you curse have malediction stats from the Malediction Notable. Now, this one, GGG doesn't know what to do with Occultist. It is a very, very strong ascendancy. If you've been around for a while, Occultist used to actually have Wicked Ward, and it actually didn't used to have that 40% less energy shield recharge rate also. And I think it used to have like plus 100 flat ES, something like that. It used to be very, very strong. And Occultist, she has so many good nodes. When they don't know what to do with her, because she just has like generically good stuff, they just put it on the passive tree. So what they're doing is they're taking the 15% effective curses from this malediction node, and they're going to be putting it somewhere on the tree. Hopefully, maybe they're just going to put it on Whispers of Doom and just kind of buff that up a little bit. I don't know what they're going to do with the Doom rate here. Like, I assume that they're probably just going to go for like curse cast speed or something. That would be my guess. Now, if they add like an additional cluster for curse effect, that could be kind of weird. Maybe they're going to put it in this Skittering Runes notable. I don't know. The other thing is we do have a 5% nodes here. My guess is they're probably going to remove that as well. I guess we'll see. So that kind of sucks. But like, as I said, curses are just going to be significantly stronger against bosses. So it's not going to be a big deal. And talking specifically about the Bane build, we already have a decent amount of curse effect. We have gems that have high level, high quality, so they have increased effect right there, especially with Ashes of the Stars. And then we have the 10% right here. So losing that 15% effect is not going to be a really big deal. We already have so much increased effect across the rest of the tree already, so it's really not going to be too noticeable. Now, they are removing enemies you curse have malediction, 10% reduced damage, and take 10% increased damage. So I actually don't like the losing the 10% reduced damage dealt by the monsters, because it was a nice little, bump of defensive layer. I think people have been kind of a little panicking about the take 10% increased damage. And I'm here to tell you that it just doesn't matter, specifically for a chaos wither-based occultist. So the way that wither works right now is for each stack of wither up to 15, monsters will take 6% increased chaos damage. Sorry, we're just going through the math here to make sure that people don't panic. and to counter any of the bad takes that are out there. So the way that increased damage works is it's a single additive more multiplier at the end of the equation. Just like at the beginning, there's increase reduced, and then there's all your mores. And then at the end, there's an additional, more, which is your increase damage taken as well. This will stack with things like bottled faith, wither, punishment, despair, stuff like that. That is a single additive more multiplier at the end of the equation. And so just by taking corruption and taking the 20% effect on the mastery, we have 9% per withered stack. 9 times 15 is 135% increased damage taken. And then if we add all these up with punishment and despair and all of that, that is a 300% more multiplier at the end of the equation. Losing malediction just makes it 290. That's it. That's a single multiplier. If you look at your 30% more damage, your hypothermia or something, that's going from 30 to 29%. It's like 1 gem level. It is so insignificant. Don't worry about it, particularly if you are a wither-based, if you're doing poison, you're doing chaos dot, anything like that, A-okay, you're totally fine. This really only affects you if you're, if you have very, very low amount of increased damage taken. So if you see anything that says like rip occultist or anything, it's such a minor change. The other thing that they're doing is they're moving the hexproof from profane bloom to malediction. Most builds, you probably just take Profane Bloom and Malediction almost no matter what, right? You're going to go into Frigid Wake, Profane Bloom, Malediction. That's just normal. Where that hexproof thing is, I don't know. Usually just roll over hexproof anyway. Doesn't really matter, right? That's no big deal. Don't sweat it. You're going to lose 1 damage. Who cares? So I'm not worrying about that whatsoever. Now, losing the curse effect, hopefully they're going to add it somewhere in the tree that's very convenient. Hopefully somewhere we're already taking it. We'll have to look when we get the actual patch notes. Temp Chains and Enfeeble, they're making Temp Chains and Enfeeble significantly stronger against bosses. For example, right now, because of that 66% modifier, and Temp Chains and Enfeeble are already inherently weaker against unique and pinnacle bosses, then it's their example here is level 20 Temp Chains would only reduce a pinnacle boss's action speed by 4%, which is less than even a really weak chill, right? Yeah, as you can see, it says rare and unique enemies only have 14% less action speed, 14 times the 0.33, right? That is, 4.62 rounded down. That's 4% less action speed. Yeah, they say that they're going to increase the less action speed modifier on Temp Chains and Enfeeble against cursed unique enemies. So hopefully that's pretty significant. We're going to see how slow bosses are going to actually be able to get. Vulnerability and Despair, they are now more focused on making enemies vulnerable to physical and chaos damage in ways that are generically useful, primarily dealing physical or chaos damage. Maybe we'll see more Exsanguinate and rebuilds, which would be pretty cool. Hexblast had his skill mechanics and damage adjusted to account for loss of Doom scaling. Broadly speaking, it does less damage at the very top end of gameplay. Now, the way that I'm interpreting this is that right now, Hexblast actually does really, really good damage without any hexes on the monster. I'm doing this right now, this league, with my cast on crit Hexblast. The way that I'm interpreting this is on the very high-end gameplay, the multiplier with max Doom and all that, you're going to lose that. However, they're adjusting the skill in general to be better. So if you were using Hexblast and not building around Doom, it's just going to be way more damage. If that's the case, I'm definitely looking really closely at Hexblast. This just might be a gigantic Hexblast buff. In general, hexes will be stronger against tough monsters and weaker against lesser monsters. We've removed Doom in order to simplify how hexes work, introduced penalties to automated hex application, and made several other balance changes. I think that this is totally good, just as Tai Killer says. Nice. Very, very good across the board. I do feel weird about them just kind of taking occultist stuff and more putting it on the passive tree. It's weird because she is really, really strong. Even after these changes, she's still incredibly strong. It just feels weird that they look at her stuff and say, we want to make this more generic. I hope that they continue to just keep it in the back of their head that I don't know, let her keep her identity a little bit. As we know, Malediction already is on a small cluster jewel. There's so much overlap with how she works. And that's why builds that are good on her can often just be played on other ascendancies, as we see with Tricksters, often a defensive version of occultist stuff. I just want to make sure that she retains her character. She still has it. This is a minor change, especially after the Wicked Ward and all that. Kind of weird. Yeah, anyway, this is overall very, very good. The changes with Bane specifically, I think, are going to be absolutely incredible. I actually started doing the math and I just kind of stopped because it's not worth even going into too much detail until we get the actual patch note numbers. Don't panic. Don't get too excited. As always, just wait until we get the actual patch note numbers before panicking or anything. But based on this manifesto, I think that this is just a great buff across the board. Even if you aren't building into any curse effect right now, and you're automating your curses, you have a curse on hit ring and all of that, this should just be a generic, like a tiny, tiny boost for those type of builds. But for builds that do invest into curses and curse effect already, having more access to that, having those curses be so much stronger. Very cool thing. I think we're going to see more cast when damage taken in Feeble or Tempt Chains, stuff like that, just as like a nice little boost of a damage layer. You know, weird thing is the Occultist stuff, but I am really excited. And then this Thursday, we get the actual, hopefully the full patch notes. They've been doing it on the announcement for the Forbidden Sanctum 3.20 on Thursday. So I hope you join me at twitch.tv/subtractem for that. Hang out with me as we react to these patch notes live. And yeah, hopefully everything looks as good as I hope it does. So anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see y'all tomorrow. Goodbye. Most builds need many buttons? That's not true. Oh, this sucks. This sucks. I didn't... Oh, I die! I did die! I did die. Okay, that's fine.